Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions 4 p.m. BST on a Tuesday afternoon. It's that little period between the Christmas season and we're coming up to New Year's Eve on Thursday. I've got something a bit special planned for Thursday's show, but also we've got something very special today as we've brought Meghla in and we are going to go in depth. Meghla, I'm just going to share to the groups. Do you want to let people know what you've been doing over the Christmas period before we get into your story?
Absolutely, yes. I've been just chilling over the last week or so and hanging out with my son, taking him out to the airport to hang out. Apparently, the airport is a cool place in Singapore to hang out. And yeah, I mean, just planning for next year, finishing up some projects for 2020, and just thinking about what needs to be done for 2021, and just mainly focusing on, yeah, making plans for next year.
Superb. Cool. Let's get straight into it. As it's your in depth, we're going to go back your entrepreneurial journey from childhood to where you are today. So, some of your most early experiences, were you entrepreneurial as a kid?
Um, I wouldn't say entrepreneurial, but I did want to be independent, and I did want to, uh, you know, be financially stable, and I wanted to earn, uh, you know, be independent and earn a living myself. And
Yeah.
I started doing part-time jobs when I was in school, when I was in 10th grade, after I finished my board exams. They're known as board exams in India. And we had a couple of months break. And so I started doing part-time jobs. I was, like working as a salesperson at a mall, selling shampoos and selling epilators. And also there was one gig that I did where I was selling cigarettes,
Yeah.
standing on a roadside stall and just selling cigarettes to people. So I was doing all sorts of odd jobs. And I also started a company at that time with one of my friends. And this was in college later after school. And we were selling water level indicators. It's probably, you probably don't know what that
Well,
is.
no, I don't know what it is. So, explain what they are, is. And then the other question is why?
Well, for why we have to go way back, Danny, and we have
Yeah.
to start at the beginning.
Okay. Go on, let's wind
Yeah.
that back then, because tell us what they actually are first and then why you're selling.
Yeah, so water level indicators are these gadgets that you actually put in your water tanker. So in India, what happens is there's fresh water. At least at that time, there's fresh water coming in every couple of hours, and then you had to fill in your water tank at home. But people's water tanks were up on their roofs, and they didn't know when the water tank was full, and it would overflow. So there was this little gadget that you could put in the water tank, and it would tell you when the tank is full, and it would beep inside your kitchen or wherever inside your house, so you could turn off the pump that fills in the tank. So we were selling that, and we did door-to-door marketing and telemarketing to sell that, but of course it didn't work work
But
out
this is
much.
the thing. Like for me, you're quite reserved. Like when we're good friends, but you're quite reserved as a person. You knocking on doing telesales because that's a really hard job. I mean, I've done it a couple of times when I was a teenager, but it's the most horrific thing to do telephone sales or door to door because the level of rejection you get and the wins is tiny, isn't it? I think you get like 1 out of 100 yeses. So it takes a lot of self-esteem to do that kind of stuff. So I'm actually surprised, as knowing you as a person, you were out there knocking on doors and stuff. But that's good. It's character building, as they say.
Yeah.
So you've done a number of jobs. What age group was this from? So you're still in high school, right? When you were doing these?
Yeah, so I was high school, started college, and right through university, 3 years of university, I was doing these part-time jobs and working off and on.
So what were you studying at uni?
Sociology. I did sociology honors, and I wanted to do English literature, but I didn't get into a good college. So I had to choose between getting into a good college and doing sociology or something else, or not getting into a good college and doing English literature. So I just
Yeah.
decided to go in a good college, and yeah.
So that was what that pushed you in a direction to take that up as a discipline or something to study.
No, I mean that was just basically to do my graduation,
Right.
to get a degree. That's the reason I did my. I actually wanted to do journalism right after school, and I applied for a very prestigious journalism college. I got through the entrance exam, but I couldn't get through the oral. They had a an oral exam too. I couldn't get through that,
Gotcha.
and so then yeah, my next best option was just to go to university, get a regular degree, and then
I see. So you,
start.
the idea between like as you termed it, a regular degree is just so it's on the CV, so it makes you employable. That's the reason why you went down that route. So what did you do when
Yeah.
you wanted, when you were growing up? What did you want to do? What was the dream?
So when I was growing up, I did want to be a writer. I did want to do journalism and write. And it's really funny how that came about. One of my aunts actually moved away to a different city. This was when I was maybe 12 or 13 years old. And I was really close to her. And she moved to a different city. And I started writing letters to her, and I would write these really long 6 7 page letters, and they were funny, and I would tell stories about what I did and how things happened, and they used to really enjoy reading my letters. And I used to write one every couple of weeks or so, and my aunt and uncle and their kids, they used to eagerly wait for my letters. And my aunt told me, hey, you can be a writer, you're really good at writing. And that just stuck with me, and I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to be. I'm going to be a writer.
Right, gotcha. Well, it's funny because you should say that, because obviously there's a lot of people that do like the landing page style copy, like the sales copy. And do you remember? I can't remember. We were talking about it on the show a little while ago, where that old tradition of people doing postcards and letters by mail, like doing sales through copywriting, through letters there. So you hit your teenage years. You've gone into university. Where did you go from there?
So after university, well, let me talk a little bit about my childhood, because
Sorry,
that sort of leads
apologies.
into,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
leads
yeah,
into where I am, and sort of shapes who I am today,
yeah.
who I am, yeah, as a person today. So I mean, my childhood was not very pleasant. I would say my father was not really around much, and in fact, my biological father, he died even before I was born. And then my mother got married to somebody else, and I consider him to be my father. But
Yeah.
when I was around 3 or 4, they kind of separated, and I was with my mom. And then when I was around 7 or 8, she got married to another person, and he was not a really nice person. He was very abusive, and he had 3 kids from a previous marriage. And he was abusive to my mom, and he used to beat her, and really very mean to her. And then his sons, who were maybe 4 or 5 years older to me, they used to do the same thing to me.
Wow.
So I was, and just for no reason. I still don't understand why. Maybe they just saw what their dad was doing to my mother, and they thought it was normal, and they were trying to just emulate that. And but they would beat me with cycle chains and cricket bats and slippers, and just for no reason. And I had to endure that for almost 2 years. And it was difficult for my mom also to see me in that situation, because she couldn't do anything. She was also sort of powerless, and she was trapped in that situation. And yeah, it's funny. Like when I was around, I think 8 or so, I actually ran away from that home, because I was just so sick and tired of everything. I just wanted to, escape. And one day, early in the morning, I woke up at around 5 6 o'clock. Everybody else was sleeping in the house. I just sneaked out of the house, and I locked the door from outside. And I didn't know where I would go, what I would do, but I took my toothbrush with me. And it's funny now when I think about it. Why, for all the things, I just took my toothbrush. I didn't take anything else, no clothes, no nothing. But I just don't know what I was thinking at that time. But I just went out and I started walking on the street. And luckily there was this lady who saw me, and she saw that I was kind of lost, and just walking around with a toothbrush. And she asked me, where are you from? Who are your parents? And she was a nice lady. She took me home. Then she somehow coaxed me into giving my mother's phone number. And then she called my mother, and then she brought me home. So I was very lucky that nothing untoward happened to me on that day. but it was really bad. But after that, my mom realized that, okay, this situation is getting out of hand. And then she sent me to live with my grandmother. And so I lived there for about 2 or 3 years. And then my mother came out of that situation after another 2 years or so. And then when I was around 12 or 13, that's when we started living together with my grandparents. And the next 10 years were kind of very unstable because my mom was, she was a single parent. She was struggling. She also had another daughter from the second marriage, my half sister. And so she had a government job, but it didn't pay too well. And she was not very happy with what she was doing. So she quit the government job. Then she tried doing a business. That didn't work. Then she started doing other small jobs here and there. So there was a lot of instability throughout that period. And we were always moving houses. We were, sometimes living with our grandparents. Then she would have a fight with them. We would go to another place. Then she would move out. Then she bought a house somewhere else and she didn't like that. And after 6 months, she moved out of there. So, I mean, almost every year we were moving houses. And sometimes 2 or 3 times a year we were just moving around. So there was a lot of instability at that time. And also, we were not financially, we were not really, doing well. Of course, she was a single mom and struggling. So at that time, there are a couple of things that I really thought to myself that I would do for myself when I grow up. So first of all, I wanted to have financial stability. I mean, I didn't want to be, super rich or something, but just financial stability. And I wanted to be able to buy whatever I want for myself without having to think twice. Growing up, I always saw other kids and their parents pampering them and buying gifts and everything, but we couldn't really afford those sorts of things. And we were just, we were going to a good school, and I always thank my mom for sending me to a really good school and giving me a good education. That's something that she really focused on. But otherwise, we were basically, just very basic living and hand to mouth sometimes, basically. So so then I wanted financial stability for myself, and then secondly, I wanted my own home because we were just moving around so much, and I was just tired of every 6 months just pack your stuff and move. So I wanted my own home, and I also wanted to be independent. I did not ever want to be dependent on anybody, especially financially. That was something that I promised myself. I think in my teens or so, I said I am always, always going to be financially independent and never going to be dependent on anybody, especially a man. And also, I wanted a complete family because growing up, I didn't ever have that set sense of family, and I felt very unloved and lonely, and I did not want that for my own child. So I wanted a complete family. So yeah, growing up, I knew these are the things that I wanted for myself. And so when I finished university, first of all, I didn't want to do university because I had got a really good job at a TV station. This is right after I finished school. I got a part time job at a TV station, and this is one of the top TV stations in the country. And there was a TV show that was being launched, and I was helping with that show. And they really liked my work, and they said, "Hey, why don't you continue working here? We'll give you a full time job." And I told my mom that, "Hey, I want to work. I don't want to do college, and this is it. I want to go into journalism, and this is what I want to do." And she said, "No, you have to finish your university. That's it. There's no arguing." And I'm kind of glad she did that because in many ways, having that on your CV is really important. So yeah, I did my university. I did sociology, and right after university, in fact, 3 days after my exams finished, I got my job. I started working. I didn't even wait for my results. I'd started applying for jobs even before I finished my exams. And then 3 days after I finished, I started working. And I worked with a newspaper. That's where I started. It was a weekly newspaper that was just starting out. And I basically helped create the entire newspaper from scratch. So it was just such an amazing feeling. And those 3 years in my first job, I put in my heart and soul, and just worked so hard. And I did really well. I was promoted within the first 6 months. I was promoted, my salary was doubled, and I quickly, started taking over more responsibilities. So yeah, I mean, that's how my career started. Yeah.
Wow. The reason I kind of skipped over the childhood stuff is because when we spoke last week, you weren't going to be as revealing as you were there. So it's
Yeah.
incredibly courageous of you. Yeah, so sorry about that. But how do you feel about sharing that now to kind of get it off your chest?
Yeah, I was very apprehensive, and I took a couple of weeks just to decide whether or not to do this with you, Danny, right? Because I am a reserved person, and I haven't really talked about this, with anyone, let alone publicly.
Yeah.
So, but I think, yeah, it feels, and I was very jittery and nervous before coming on the show as well. So, yeah, but it does feel, I do feel lighter, and it's off my chest now.
That's good. I mean, there's stuff in there that you haven't told me that in our private chats and stuff, and things like with chains and God knows what. So I'm sorry that you were put through such an ordeal, but it's good to see you sitting where you
Yeah.
are today and doing what you're doing. But yeah, let's carry on
I
with your
think
story. Go on.
Yeah, but that's also shaped me in some ways. I mean, that those 2 years are where I've basically seen the worst a person can be, or a human can be, and I'm sure, I mean, there are people who are worse than that, but I have seen, like, I would say, demons. And also, it's made me stronger because I've been through all of that pain. So sometimes I'm not scared to take risks because I think, okay, what is the worst that can happen? I've been through so much pain already. I've seen such, horrible people, and I've experienced so much already. What else can happen? What is it that is worse that can happen, right? So
Yeah,
I
I
think it's
think
made me
once
stronger.
you've hit rock bottom, the only way
Yeah,
is up. I had the same analogy in a different way to you. It's like losing two children. Most
yeah,
people won't ever understand what to lose one, let alone two. And so that's always been my barometer. Is like, what is the worst that can happen? Because I feel like that's already done. Do you know what I mean? I've been through that, like you. So when you make decisions, or you get up and you feel like you don't want to face the day, or you have stuff going on, you always revert back to certain things, don't you? Like, I always look to being grateful for what I have and not focus what I don't have. Does that make sense? And like what you said there with your childhood, and I've haven't told my story about my childhood. That's another day. But I agree with what you say, is that once you've reached a certain a place, nothing else touches the sides anyway. So it makes it easier to make those decisions. Is the point I'm trying to get to.
yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that.
So this
Yeah.
this is part of the shaping process. There's an independent woman, and like you said, you don't want to be supported by anyone else. You want to do this for yourself. So you've gone to university. Where did we go once you graduated?
Yeah, so I met my husband in university. Actually, I had known him since childhood. He was neighbors.
Yeah.
But then we started to meet and get to know each other in university. And then after I started working, I moved out of the house, and I started living with my husband. We took an apartment. And then we got married in 2001. And right before that, in the year 2000, that's when I started working with Global Sources. And my boss at the previous organization that where I started my career, he had moved to Global Sources, and he was in the Manila office at that time of Global Sources. And he said, "Hey, there's this really good opportunity in India for Global Sources, and they're looking for an India bureau chief." And I was like, "India bureau chief? That sounds like a very fancy position. I'm just like a senior sub editor over here. Like, how can I be India bureau chief and all?" And then he said, "No, it's really good. I'm sure you can do it." And he was sort of my mentor and my first boss over there. So he really believed in me, and I'm really, really grateful for him to have given this opportunity to me. So then, yeah, my career with Global Sources started, and that was a really, really enriching, fruitful, well-paying career, and I really enjoyed my time there. So I worked for them for 3 years in India, And then in 2003, we moved to the Philippines. So there was an opening in the Philippines at the Global Sources office. They were actually launching these research reports called China sourcing reports, and they were looking for an editor to manage those. And so they had actually put out an advertisement in the newspaper in India and also other places. And so I said, "Hey, why don't I try?" And at that time, my husband was running an automobile workshop, but his business was not doing too well. So he was also looking for alternatives and something different to do. So we thought, hey, let's try this. Let's just go outside of India. I mean, I had been overseas to other countries, but he had never traveled overseas. But we didn't really know what to expect in the Philippines. We thought that, hey, Philippines is all beaches and we're going to have like a big house by the beach or something like that. But when we went there, then it was just another crowded city with a lot of poverty, in fact. So, but anyways, we went there. We stayed for about 3 years. It was a bit tough for my husband because it was difficult for him to find a job there, and he was struggling. And then he had to come back to India for quite some time because it was just so difficult to find a job over there. And then I was struggling a bit because it was a totally new culture environment for me because this first time coming out of India, and all of my bosses were Americans and Australians, and my colleagues were of course Filipinos, but different culture. So culturally it was very different, and I had to adjust to that. And I was also trying to be I was trying to do things the way that they were writing the reports, for example. So the first report that I wrote, I remember, was on stuffed plush toys, and we had to basically visit factories and write the report. So that was the first time I went to China, 2003, visited stuffed toy factories, and I basically wrote a report on that. And I mean, we also had market analysts in China who went with us to the factories. Um, and then when I wrote the report, I was trying really hard to, write the best report, of course, because it was the first one that I was writing. So I read all the previous reports that were written by other colleagues, and I tried to just, emulate them and copy them and write the way that they were writing. And then when my boss saw the first draft, he was like, what is this? Are you sure you can write? Is this, what is this crap? I mean, he was just he almost said that, like, what is this crap? And I was almost in tears sitting in that office with him. I still remember that. I was like, oh my God, what have I done? This is a big mistake. Now they're going to fire me and I'm going to have to go back to India. And what have I done? And then that was a really difficult time for me because I was really struggling with, how to adjust in this new culture. And then what am I not doing right? And I used to go back home and talk to my husband, and we used to discuss and everything. And then I realized that I'm not being myself. I just need to be myself because when I was in India, they liked who I was, but I was trying to emulate the other reports and try to be like them. So then the next report that I did was small kitchen appliances, and we visited coffee factories. I mean, coffee machine factories and toasters and all of those things. And I just wrote the report, from my heart and just the way that I would. And that was the best report ever. And the CEO of Global Sources, he read the report, and from everywhere, people were writing emails and, hey, this is a really good report. And that sort of became an example of how to write a research report. So yeah, and that's how I sort of my found myself and my identity over there. And that was a really important lesson for me because to this day I kind of remember that those times, and I remind myself that, hey, I need to be myself. I don't have to copy other people or try to emulate other people. I need to be true to myself, and that's the only way that I will be the best in what I do. So yeah, we were there for about 3 years, and then there was a lot of focus on China. Of course, China was emerging as a very as a production hub, and exports were increasing significantly. And even global sources, they were focusing a lot on China. They were setting up offices there, and so in 2006, they asked me to move to Shenzhen. And it was good in a way because there'd be more opportunities for my husband over there. So then 2006 we moved to China, And then he started a company in Hong Kong, and he started doing a bit of trading over there as well. So 9 years in China, probably the best time of my life. I mean, I just love Chinese culture and the country and the food and the people. And, we had a good life there. We had good friends. We were earning well. We had a nice apartment, good job. So yeah, it was a good life then.
And how long ago was that? You was in China. When did you move out of China?
So we moved out in 2015. So we were there for 9 years. And then my son was born there as well.
Yeah.
In 2010, he was born in China. And yeah, so China was real fun. I traveled a lot for work. I traveled to different cities. I set up teams over there. There was the city, Xi'an. I don't know if you've been there or heard about it, where the terracotta warriors are.
No, what's
No?
that?
Terracotta warriors? No? Okay. So there's this huge army of terracotta soldiers basically that are buried underground
Right.
for, I don't know, thousands of years. And I can't remember the name of the king, but there was a king who actually created this army, for his to protect him in the afterlife.
Gotcha.
And it is just such a beautiful city, a very ancient city, and the set terracotta warriors and global sources had set up an office there. And so I was setting up my team for the research reports over there. So I used to travel there. We traveled within China a lot, Beijing, to different cities. So that was a really good time for us, fun times, and also a lot of learning, a lot of traveling, a lot of learning, visiting lots and lots of factories and all sorts of cities in China, and like rural areas, sitting in a tractor, going to a factory somewhere inland. So yeah,
And
that was
then,
a good
and
time.
is that when you left China, you went to Singapore?
Yes, and so as my son was growing up, we had to think about his education, and so that's why we decided to come to Singapore. And I asked Global Sources for a transfer because they have an office in Singapore, and they agreed. And Global Sources is an amazing employer, really. I have so much to be grateful for to Global Sources. So yeah, I mean, 2015 we moved here to Singapore.
Yeah. And then what came next?
Yeah, what came next was tragedy. I mean, it was just unexpected. 2017 in April, I lost my husband to a heart attack, and that was like, the biggest loss, of course, that anyone can, I think, experience. So yeah,
What
that
do
was
you, for
just
you?
devastating.
You were organising the October one, was it? 2017 Global Sources. When this happened, you were in Hong Kong, weren't you?
Yeah, I was in Hong Kong, and that was in April
April.
2017.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was in Hong Kong. The summit was going to start the next day, so this was a day before the summit that he had a heart attack. And my son FaceTimed me in the morning, and he said, "Mom, look what's happening to Papa, and the doctors are over here. We called the ambulance and everything." And he was basically having a heart attack at that time, and the ambulance came really quickly and they took him to hospital, but it was such a massive heart attack. They were not able to save him. So, I mean, I came back the same day, but he just went into a coma and he didn't come out of it. So, the next day, April 17th, he passed away.
Wow. And so you didn't get a chance to say your goodbyes either face to face.
No, nothing at all. And I feel so, I mean, I don't,
You
not
didn't get. You
guilty
didn't get.
because
You didn't get the closure.
the closure, yeah. And
Yeah.
there was no indication that this would happen. I mean, he did have high blood pressure and he was a smoker, and, he had diabetes. He had all of that at a very young age, but there was no indication of, a heart attack, no chest pain, or no, just no warning signs at all. So that was something that totally devastated me. And at that time, I just didn't know what to do. And at one point I really was thinking of just ending our lives because I didn't know how I could keep going alone, because he was literally my rock. And we were really, really close. I mean, of course, like every husband and wife, we had our quarrels and fights and everything, disagreements, but we were really close. And so, yeah, I mean, we used to complete each other's sentences, and I knew what he was feeling and what he wanted when, and vice versa. So we were really close. And so that was like very, very devastating to me. In fact, I think it's just because of my son that I'm here today. If it weren't for my son, I don't think I'd be able to survive.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of people around you would question that as well. The only reason is to be for your son, because you've got a lot of people that around you that love you, including your friends. I lost you there, Meghla. The screen's frozen. Are you back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah. No, I was just saying there is more than one reason to stay around other than your son, because there's a lot of people around you that love you, including your friends.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's right.
So let's talk about picking up the pieces. So you go back home. Your son's obviously witnessed all this as well. He got some closure by being... Did he get to speak to your husband as well? Or?
Well, not really, because, I mean, because my husband didn't know what was happening to him as well, right? I mean, he just had this heart attack, and then he was just... The last thing I heard my husband saying, this is on FaceTime, he's talking to the doctors, who had come to get him. He said that my insurance card is in my wallet. Those are the last words that I heard him speak. And I mean, even at that time, he was thinking about insurance and expenses, and like not to be burdensome on me, I guess.
Well, this is the thing. I think as a father, as a husband, I think, and I think I speak for most men, is that, I know we've got feminism and independence and agency for a man and a woman to do their own thing, but I think men are generally, if they love their families, that they're thinking, oh shit, this is going through mine, what's happening on here, I need to make sure my family is safe. So he's thinking of you at that time. I know you want to hear different words, but the reality is he's thinking, what do I leave behind for my wife and my son? So he's actually thinking of you instead of himself. And I think that's a typical of a guy that, like on a biological level, if you go back hundreds and thousands of years, or as far back you want, hunter-gatherer, like men generally want to be providers as well. I know women can provide for themselves, but I think it's built into us biologically that's who we are. We want to make sure those things are right, and I think most men would have the same thing. So what I'm saying to you is, don't see that as any way as a negative. And I know you'd probably want to hear different words, but he was just thinking of you two first, I think.
Yeah. That's what I think too. That he was thinking of us.
So the building blocks. We're back home, and you took some time out, of course, from global sources.
Yeah, I took some time off, but then I did go back, fairly quickly, because I needed to get busy. Otherwise, it was, I would go into a depression if I didn't do that. So yes, I needed to keep myself busy. Started going back to work and everything, and we were just trying to get back to normal. I mean, just trying to move forward. I mean, you can never forget, right? I mean, there are people who leave us, they're always with us, but you can just try to move forward and move on with your life in some way. So that's what we were just trying to do. And it was really difficult initially, because there's so much pain, and I used to feel physical pain in my chest, and I used to think, oh my God, am I having a heart attack? Because that was my fear too, because now he's gone. What if something happens to me, and then what's going to happen to my son, who's going to take care of him? So that was a huge fear. And I actually went to the doctor once. I was like, I've got this pain in my chest, and the doctor said that this is just physical pain that you're experiencing because of your loss.
It's trauma.
There's nothing wrong.
You're physically when someone like you push stuff to the back of your mind, right? You don't deal with it. you pay a physical price on a physiological level as well. So trauma, if you don't mentally process and go through the healing process itself and get that out your system, physically your body will break down because it's carrying that trauma as well. So I understand when someone says like you're physically in pain, people might go,
Yeah.
"What, you're a bit crazy," this, that, and the other. But
Yeah.
it has to come. The grieving process has to take place at some point. And if you hold it in on a mental level, you'll process on a physical level. I'm trying to think of it. There's a great book that you might want to read. I'll tell you the title of it now. Someone mentioned it the other day, and I think
Is it
this
the
is
one written by Sheryl Sandberg? Is it that one?
no. This book is. Let me have a look. It's called The Body Keeps Score. And what that
Okay.
talks about is that people that have issues with their health and stuff is if you go back to the childhood and stuff like that, people don't process their trauma. They don't want to look there, right? So they put it to the back of their mind. And so what they're talking about on a physical level of how that acts on your body and the pressure it puts on your body, and this is where it leads to various other diseases within inside of the body. And it's called the Body Keeps Score, I think it is. One sec, let me tell you again. Yeah, it's called The Body Keeps Score by... I won't even bother trying to pronounce the name, but people can search that title. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously there's not enough proven science behind it as we know it in the what's the word for it, like ubiquitous science, because people go, oh well, you're not going to process, if someone hits you, you feel physical pain. But
Yeah.
I think it's the same with so it's definitely a book that I'm going off track here because it's obviously this story's been upsetting me as well.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So what were some of the building blocks coming back for you? What have you done to help with the healing process?
Well, I really just focused on, my son, and there were times when I used to feel myself going into a depression and just spiraling downwards, and then I had to, consciously lift myself up, and I had to remind myself that hey, my son depends on me, and I cannot go into depression, and I need to take care of myself in order to, take care of him. So he was really my driving force. And then, of course, I was really focused on my work, and still doing the summit. And then 6 months later, I went back to Hong Kong, which was again so torturous. The same room. You've stayed at the Regal Hotel, right? All the
Yeah.
rooms have the same layout, and so I went back to the same. It looked like the exact same room from April when
They're called
I
emotional
got Hong Kong.
flashbacks. Yeah, they're called
Yeah,
emotional flashbacks. If you do, I think it's called hand mnemonics. Look into that, and it help you with your emotional literacy and reduce the emotional flashbacks from that. But I understand what you're saying, because you're going back to the same place. It's like that camera roll that plays over and over in your head, and it's just trying to get beyond that. So
yeah.
you've had a few summits since then. So was the toughest time going back the first time and getting that familiarity, and then what was it like after? Was it a bit easier for you?
Yeah, the second time was much easier. The first time was really difficult, but I had to still do it, of course. And then when I went, for the summit, the first day, I was physically sick again. Right before I went on stage and inaugurated the summit and everything, I went to the bathroom and I actually just puked.
Yeah.
So I was physically feeling so sick. But then, yeah, I mean, I sort of just pulled through somehow. I had a great team supporting me and helping me, and of course, meeting everybody. And that was great. So yeah, I mean, since then I've done quite a few summits until. So 2017, my husband passed, and then 2018, Global Sources announced that they would close the Singapore office. So that was another big blow for me at that time, because I thought that okay, at least I have my job, and I love my job, and I have security, I have financial security with the job. But then they announced that they were closing the Singapore office, and they would retrench everybody, or you could go back, you could move to Hong Kong, relocate to Hong Kong or China. But I didn't want to do that. I really liked it here. So then I had to think of other options. And luckily we had almost a year to plan. I mean, they told us way in advance. So that was a really good thing. So we had time to plan. And within that 1 year, I was, still very confused about what I really wanted to do after Global Sources. So I was thinking of maybe relocating to another country, moving back to India, starting my business, looking for another job. I was just kind of all over the place, and I tried different things, didn't work. And then finally, interestingly, CJ Rosenbaum, from Amazon Seller's Lawyer, he had at one time mentioned that, hey, why don't you start a trip to India? Because, the trade war and all had started at that time. And he was getting requests from people for suppliers in India. And so he threw that suggestion out to me. And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. I haven't thought about that. And that's when I started thinking about this trip. And then in 2019, early 2019, I started working on it. And then June 2019 was going to be my last day with Global Source. I mean, my last month with Global Sources. So I had to do something, by then. So then in January 2019, I started working on the trip and did a lot of background research and went to India, talked to a lot of people, and started putting this trip together. And then I launched it in June, and I sold the first ticket 3 days before my last day at Global Sources. So I was so happy about that.
So that was the crossover. So you were in a position where you'd lost your husband, the
Yeah.
the global sources adventure was starting to come to an end. You were looking to where to go next, and you've kind of then literally gone and launched on your own now, haven't you? In terms of what you're doing now. So we're here where we are today. I mean, how many trips have you done now? Is it two or one so far?
It's just one. I mean, sadly, the one that I did was in October 2019. And then, of course, COVID hit after that. So I couldn't do the trips in 2020. But the first trip was really, really good. And I just put my heart and soul into it. And everybody had such a great time. And I just can't wait to go back
Yeah.
to start doing those trips again. Yeah.
So what's next for you?
Yeah, so 2020 was a very difficult year because, of course, the trips, I couldn't do the trips, and I was planning to do other events as well. In Singapore, I was planning to do a conference. I was planning to do a trip to China as well, so couldn't do any of those things. And then, luckily, Global Sources, I had Global Sources, the summits. I was still doing the summits for them as a consultant. So I had, some revenue coming in from there. Took on a few more consultancy kind of jobs. And then Margaret and Kevin, they've been my partners for this other venture, Virtual India Sourcing Show. So I've tried to pivot to virtual events a little bit more in 2020. And we've been a bit successful with those kinds of virtual events. So 2021, we're planning to expand those services and trying to help people source from India, trying to offer all sorts of services ranging from sourcing to logistics to inspections, just sort of an end-to-end platform where people can source products from India.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I think you've had an incredible story there. I'm really glad that things have turned around for you. So, next question really is money or legacy?
Legacy for sure. I mean, that's something that I've always wanted. When I was growing up, I wanted to start a school for poor girls in India. That has always been my dream. I wanted to start a school, and this is from school because one time when we were in school, there was this nonprofit that came over to our school, and they had this educational program called Each One Teach One. And they said that if every person in India who's educated, if they can educate or teach just the alphabet to an uneducated person, that will really make a huge difference. And so that really stuck with me. And I always wanted to build a school for poor girls, specifically girls, because in India, sadly, girls are not well educated, and they still kind of prioritize boys over girls. So that's something that I wanted to do. I haven't been able to do that yet, hopefully someday, but I am sponsoring kids in India through a non-profit organization. I've been doing that for quite a few years. And even when we went on the trip, I got each person who went with us on the trip to sponsor a child in India. And I mean, we just paid for the child from the ticket price that they had paid. So I mean, they didn't have to pay anything extra. But yeah, so legacy for sure. Yeah.
Excellent. How would you like to be remembered?
I would like to be remembered as somebody who had empathy, who could empathize with people, because I feel that that is such an important thing. And a lot of people don't have empathy. And to me, it comes naturally. I think maybe it's because of my experiences and the pain that I've experienced. I can immediately feel other people's pain, and I
Yeah.
can really empathize with people. So I think that's something that's very important. And whether it's your personal life or professional or business, empathy is really important.
Yeah. No, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Thank you for coming on today, and thank you for sharing your story. What's the best way that people can reach you?
Well, the best way is to join my Facebook group. It's called Sourcing from India, Amazon FBA Private Label. So join the group and reach out to me on Messenger.
Excellent. Guys, I'll be back here 4 p.m. BST tomorrow. We've got Mike Jackness joining us tomorrow. We're going to be doing an in-depth. And then on Thursday, if I can get the streaming working, we won't be a traditional podcast. We're going to do a New Year's Eve pre-drinks party. And I'll be DJing, and we're going to be playing a load of old school hip hop and party records as well. So a little bit of experiment, and it's me coming out of retirement after 12 years, the last time I was DJing in public. But we'll see how it goes. It might be a complete mess, but we'll give it a go. So I'll be back here 4 p.m. tomorrow. Meghla, again, thank you for joining today, and take care. See you soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Jenny. Bye.